Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Digital Swiss FP&A Board. Today we'll be talking about deploying AI, ML, and predictive analytics for planning. My name is Hans Gobin. I will be facilitating this meeting. I am ambassador for FP&A Trends and International FP&A Board. Today we are joined by over 300 people, mostly from the Swiss region, but from additional 20 odd countries as well. So let's move on. This is a slide on previous meeting we've had in Switzerland, so take a time to go through it and look at what we've talked about. What are we going to talk about today? So what's on the agenda? We will quickly run through FP&A evolution, vision for FP&A of the future. We will then look at Lonza's pilot case study on predictive analytics, using predictive analytics for planning and strategy. And then final presentation will be on how technology can help us develop these tools for better forecasting. Conclusion and recommendation, and finally, the Q&A session. It is now a good time for me to ask our members of the panel to join us and say hello. First of all, we have Vignesh. Vignesh is having some problem joining, so we will pass back to him again. Well, let me just introduce Vignesh very quickly. So Vignesh Jumonso is CFO at Flex, and he will be talking about the vision of FP&A of the future. Our second member, and guys, you can all join me on the webcam anyway, is Patrick Somlo. Patrick is head of FP&A at Lonza, and Patrick will take us through his case study on predictive analytics. Patrick, we don't see you on the webcam. Great to have you with us anyway. Patrick, you there? We'll hear from Patrick in a bit. Our third presenter for today will be Stefan Spiegel, who is CFO Swiss Railway, Freight Logistic, SBB Cargo AG. And Stefan will talk to us about how he's using predictive analytics for planning and strategy. Stefan, great to have you with us.
Yes, same to me. Hello, everybody.
Patrick, great to have you with us as well.
Yeah, thank you. Hello to everyone.
Brilliant. And our final presenter for today will be Fabrizio Tuccini, who is a global head of innovation at CCH Tagetik. And of course, he will take us through how technology can help us implement these tools and make forecasting better. Absolutely. Fabrizio, great to have you with us.
Thank you, Hans. Hello, everybody, and nice to be with you.
Thank you very much, a member of the panel. We've got three of the members from Switzerland, and Fabrizio comes from Italy, a very nice place, Luca. Looking forward to your great insight, panelists. If I may ask you to switch off your webcam and go on mute for now, I've got a few slides that I need to run through before we move on. So a quick slide on FP&A Trends Group. As you know, we are in 27 cities, 16 countries, 4 continents. Today, we're trying to bring together Zurich and Geneva FP&A boards, but as I mentioned, quite a few people have joined us from other countries as well. Another key point to highlight is that we are now providing best practice workshops and FP&A consultancy based on your demands. So what is the Digital FP&A Board? If you haven't attended before, it's 90 minutes. Stay with us for the full 90 minutes. We've got great 4 polling questions on the webinar subjects. We've got an interactive Q&A session at the end, so please stay for it. Exciting questions and answers. Please ask your question on the chat box and also direct it to who you want to answer them. You can network with us via LinkedIn. The presentation is available for you to download today. If not, you'll get a copy of the recording and presentation within a day or so after the meeting. Very important at the end of the meeting, when I close it, stay back for a minute or so and give us some feedback on how we did, what we can improve on, but more importantly, what else would you like to hear in the next session? So if you can do that, that'd be excellent. A quick thank you to our technology sponsor, is Volta, one of the global software providers for FP&A and consolidation, of course, with lots and lots of customers in the world. So thank you, our technology sponsor. I've got a few slides just to highlight here FP&A Trends 2021 survey. You can see at the top, how our time is distributed in terms of different types of activities, with very little spent on high value and medium value, and what we would like to be doing. So if you look at that 55% on the second line there, this is where we want to be, but we're not. And secondly, what are we doing in the time we spend? So driving action is only 16%, which is why it's very important to look at these tools and these new technologies for us to move this to the next level. A great quote there from our last survey: AI does not change the basic role of FP&A, but it does change the way in which that role is carried out. Very quickly, the predictive planning maturity model, and I'll draw your attention here to the leading stage. So please spend some time here to look at it. And our speakers are today going to talk quite a bit about predictive analytics, predictive planning, the use of internal, external drivers, how machine learning, AI brings this to life, and also how we get involved with operational planning as well as anything else. Digital FP&A, a great quote from Gary Kasparov. Digital FP&A success is dependent on human intelligence, artificial intelligence, but also clever processes. Then finally, what is machine learning and what is artificial intelligence? There's always a bit of confusion. Machine learning is a system that can learn from data through self-improvement and with minimal human supervision, whereas artificial intelligence englobes machine learning, enables the machine to think and react like human being. So that's thank you very much for listening to me. We now move on to our first presentation. We've got a little bit of technical issues, so I think we will go straight to presentation number 2. If you bear with me, and I'll move the slide very quickly to our case study, which is from Patrick. So today, Patrick will talk to us about Lonza's pilot case study on predictive analytics, and Patrick is head of FP&A at Lonza. So Patrick, over to you whenever you're ready.
Good. Thank you very much, Hans, for the introduction. So if we go on the next slide, and to give you a bit more background, at Lonza, we see predictive analytics really something that will complement controlling activities going forward, and it's now time to invest and explore and learn. And so I want to share the case study where we have invested significant time at the beginning to look what are the different use cases, how we can use it, what is the saving, how can we benefit from it, and then how to deploy it. And the main objective was, on one hand, to improve automation. Secondly, improve also the forecasting accuracy we do in FP&A. And then certainly, I think most importantly, to learn this new concept and build up the capabilities. So now I want to go into more specifics on how we selected what we want to do. And for that, we can go to the next slide. What I would recommend before you go and jump into different areas, because you probably have a lot of ideas where you can use machine learning and IA into controlling and business activities, I encourage you to spend a bit more time to think about holistically where you want to invest first and build capabilities. And to do so, we looked at different use cases that we thought we can use machine learning and IA. It is from SG&A forecasting, net working capital forecasting. We had a lot of production variances at Lonza, also revenue forecasting. But before we jumped into an area, we basically looked what is the benefit of doing it. On one hand, from a business perspective, so where could we make better business decisions if we have more accurate information, but then also from an automation and compliance perspective to understand, where can we save a lot of time At the moment at Lonza for about 40 controllers are doing a monthly outlook. So where can we save the time for those 2 days and then improve the compliance. We also looked how difficult it is, and then you need to understand, do you have the data to do the learning? Do you have the process, the stability? And then you understand that some areas will be more difficult than others. So we spent about 6 weeks to do this work, and then we decided to go what is on number 2, the networking capital forecasting, because this is something we considered a quick win, and we wanted to be sure, we have a success when we start to then go into more difficult areas. On the next slide, I can explain you how we approached it. So networking capital, it's mainly inventory, receivables and payables forecasting. And to do so, on one hand, you need the data input. That means you need to collect the historical data, ideally 2 to 3 years back, that you had a lot of data points on different drivers. It can be CapEx, it can be payment, it can be revenue, so that you build this data input. Then we started with what Hans said before is the machine learning part. So there are different algorithms that you can use on a time series to make a forecast. That's the number 2. And on top, we built what is called IA. So we started to combine the different forecasts and that the system can learn over time to understand what are the right predictive machine learning algorithm to take. And once we had it, we had to clean up the data and review certain outliers and remove that. So this was the system we built. It took about 4 weeks to build it for the receivable and payables. Then you probably ask, what is the result? Was it worthwhile or not? And as we are in finance, we can go into the next slide, right? And we spend a lot of time to measure also the accuracy. So on the left-hand side, you see 2 bars. You see the dark bar, and this is basically that judges the accuracy of our organization in forecasting with the past manual process. And the red one is then the machine learning process. So I think what you see that both processes are relatively accurate. So we're above 80% accuracy. It depends by division. Some are a bit higher, some lower. And I think the encouraging part for us was that the fully automated machine learning approach delivered at least, similar level of accuracies, but with a lot less effort. And we also expect, once we learn more, that it becomes more accurate. So that was a quite encouraging results. And then based on this result, this is also something that I encourage you, is to deploy it in your systems. So we use, for instance, SAC as a planning tool, and then we really embedded the machine algorithm that it's already pre-populated with the forecast, and with that, we save a lot of time in doing the forecast. So this is basically the results of our approach. And then on the next slide, I want to share some of the key learnings. I think first of all, it's very important. This is really a journey and we need to experiment over time and learn more. So this is not something you can do 3 months and it's done, but it's something I'm convinced it will take several years and it is a continuous journey. The most interesting part, and Fabrizio will talk in more detail about it, is how to deal with this black box. Because when you have a machine, it gives you and says the number is X. Before, you did an analysis and you could explain why it's X. And this is a fundamental difference is what I put into the number 3, digital transformation means cultural change. So it's a different way to explore because, on average it's better, but you cannot explain it and you need to trust, and that needs certain experience. In order to make that change, we decided to run in parallel the machine forecast and the manual forecast, and then over time replace the manual forecast with the machine forecast. I think beside number 3, a few other areas, I want to give to you is, on one hand, really spend and invest in in-house capabilities. It is a different way. You need to have more data capabilities, more programming capabilities. So start to hire the talent and make the training that the organization can learn. The second one, data quality. You can imagine if you're a large organization, you have a lot of structural changes, you need to have a long time series. So it's often not easy to have this data. You might have a lot of master data change, but think about when you build a system that you generate the data sets that you have the basis to learn, that you can build on it. Then, number 4, this is something I outlined before. Think about what you need on the infrastructure. Can you really embed it in your forecasting tools, that it's helpful, or is it another tool and then you have another set of data that is not consistent? Then on the 5th one, it's be careful and mindful what you do first. We decided to go with the easy one on the top right corner, the quick wins, and then go into more difficult parts in the future. If you start with the difficult areas, you might be at risk not to progress or to disappoint, and then you lose momentum. And with that, I think it's really something that is exciting to me, because it's a trial and error, and you need to accept that sometimes it doesn't work and sometimes it works, and you cannot fully explain why it works in one case or not in the other. But I really encourage you to have this trial and error DNA, and also expect that certain failures continues with the progress. With that, I hope I gave you a short overview about our use case. So back to Hans on the polling.
Thank you, Patrick. Excellent presentation. Before we go to the polling question, I would just like to, bring out a few things here. And please, Patrick, join me as well on the webcam. You've turned it off. Yeah, for me, this page says it all. Of course, thank you for taking us through what Lonza went through. Point 4 here, balance fundamental change project with easy wins. It's not going to be an easy journey. It is a trial and error, and you will get things wrong. But of course, learn to walk, run. If you fail, you learn from it and you move on. So thank you very much for that. Let me ask my fellow panelists, Vignesh and Fabrizio, to join us now on the webcam and give us some comments as well, please. Vignesh, if I may start with you, any comments you would like to add to Patrick's presentation, please?
Yes, absolutely, Hans. So great insights. Also, I mean, we see in real life how we can increase the speed and the depth of our analytics, which will then translate into support for business decisions. So really great slides. Yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you, Vignesh. Fabrizio, comments from you, please.
Yes, I found lots of interesting points in this presentation. First of all, the big gain that is when you fine-tune the accuracy of the model and you are confident about the quality of your prediction, what you gain immediately is to have calculated the first version of your forecast, where you can immediately start playing, etc., gaining all the time that you spend now on preparing this first version manually or semi-manually, like you do nowadays. So this is the first gain. And that I found a couple of interesting hints for the black box analysis, for example, how we can solve this dilemma on why a calculation has been made. And that's also other insight about the quality of data that I will be happy to elaborate later.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Vignesh, and thank you, Fabrizio, for great comment there. And Patrick, excellent presentation. Thank you very much. Let us move on to our polling question. So, ladies and gentlemen, it says 2 there, but if you can vote, please, I will shortly launch our first polling question for today, which is now. So, how would you describe your current FP&A process? It is static, not predictive. You have some predictive elements. It is fully driver-based. And finally, it is fully digital. We're using automation, predictive analytics, AI, and ML. If you can vote, please. So how would you describe your current FP&A process? Static, not predictive. B, have some predictive elements, so some drivers in there. C, fully driver-based, and D, digital, using automation, predictive analytics, AI, and ML. If you can vote, please. I will give it another 5 seconds, and I'm going to close, and I'm going to share it. So the outcome, 18% says static, not predictive, 68% some element of predictive elements, some drivers, 12% fully driver-based, and 2% digital. If I may ask Patrick to comment on this very quickly, please, Patrick.
Thank you, Hans. Now, it looks very interesting, the output. And I'm almost certain if you would do the same polling in 5 years, as it would go a lot down and the picture looks very different. So with that, I encourage you to experiment with those tools and be one of the earlier ones that move into the digital age.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. Of course, there's a lot of opportunity there, as you mentioned, Patrick, that we need to play with these new tools and move all the stats that we saw at the very beginning of our presentation into much more added value work. So thank you very much for that. Now let me hide this, and then we move on to our next presentation, which will be from Vignesh. And Vignesh, quickly introduce you here. Vignesh Shumonso is CFO at Flex, and today Vignesh will give us his vision of FP&A future and digitalized finance. So Vignesh, over to you whenever you're ready.
Yes, thanks a lot, Hans. So very happy to be here and present. So currently at the board of directors of Switzerland in Flex, and so we can get started. Yes, absolutely. So what I just wanted to discuss with you quickly today is there are two things. First of all, I thought we should look how the whole FP&A journey is evolving. So when we looked earlier about we looked at the black box and we had the survey where we see how much of predictive FP&A we have and how much of static FP&A we have. And I just thought, okay, if we take a small step back and we see how this FP&A journey has actually evolved, first we need to look at the goal of FP&A in its whole. And basically FP&A is in the business of making decisions or supporting the decisions in order to improve EBITDA or cash. So that's what we want to ultimately achieve with FP&A. That has not changed. That goal is still the same across businesses, currently in private equity, and it's the same approach here and in listed companies. So FP&A is really the heartbeat to try to improve EBITDA, cash, and improve other business objectives. Now we are also in sustainability objectives more and more. So, but we have some objectives that we need to reach, and FP&A is supporting that. Now, how we reach that is really the question. And on the left-hand side, you see the way it's been traditionally done. And in a lot of situations, we still are doing it like this. And the poll earlier showed that. And on the right-hand side, you see the new methods, the new ways that we can use to achieve that target. And I would like to talk about those new elements. But just before going into those new elements, the part that is still there and is still present is still static on the Excel-based models with large volume of data to manipulate. That's still in a number of companies, in a number of situations, the case. Slowly, we are moving away from that. We talked earlier about the fact that it's static. It is static and not moving and showing at a certain point of time, and also visually unappealing. We don't have the charts and the graphs that help us to go faster and understand what we are trying to decide on. And still in the past, it used to be, and still in some cases, very siloed. So looking only at one function or one area. And because it's turned on the past and on historical data, sometimes the discussions and the type of decisions which are taken are unfortunately not really so powerful, not really impacting and influencing the business, but actually being taken based on areas that have already been covered, or where the impact on the business will not be so big. So in order to get FP&A or XP&A, we had another webinar on that, to the next level, it's really how fast and how good can we integrate those new elements that we start seeing and that we heard earlier about, which are around predictive learning, integrated reporting, and real-time reporting. So the new FP&A or XP&A is something which is much more agile, fast, has the right level of zoom in and zoom out of granularity, which is integrated, means it's finance, but it's also the ability to go into the operations and into the non-financial metrics, which then translate into financial metrics such as a scrap rate in a manufacturing environment. It's much more real-time based and also scenario based. So being able to simulate models. So that will be the future of the FP&A. So if we would move to the next one, Hans, then I would like to talk to you about those elements. So the integrated reporting is, basically in a number of situations, we still are looking at internal data. So that's the data that we already have in our business, which is available. We've been traditionally doing this in this way. So we look at the sales we made to our customers, the type of products we sold, the type of employee type of data that we have in terms of payroll or compensation and so forth. And we use that internal data to build a forecast. But more and more, because we have these new ways of connecting to the external environment, we also have external data that is handy, that is available to us. So when we take the example of pricing, what is the price for I need to apply to a product? We would in the past rely on previous data or have discussions, maybe having some additional business insights, but now we can really go and let the data speak based on the type of pricing which is practiced for that type of product on the market. What is the pricing, for example, that competition could practice on this type of thing, and that gives us a better judgment in what is the level that is the most suited here. And the same thing for the capital investments and performance industry. If we have a performance management, if we have a certain performance on a product line or a company, how does that compare to the market or to the industry? So these are the additional elements that we have, and integrated reporting is also integrating not only finance, but also all the other functions. So moving from operations into the financial metrics, and that whole dimension, external, internal, historical versus predictive, is allowing us to get to the next level. So if we move to the next point, please, we would see what I would like to talk about predictive learning, which is one element of this. And predictive learning is basically the use of data or statistical algorithms that, like you've seen or you will see later in our presentations, to identify future outcomes. So first of all, we need data. So the way we approach this is basically to try to expand the so-called data lake, which is basically the data which is available to us. So the more data we have and the more relevant it is, the better can we be in predictive learning. Then selecting the right type of tool or algorithm or mechanism in order to extrapolate and process that data. Then we move into this scenario type of plans, because we have to link it into the big scenarios in terms of, are we in a growth perspective, or are we going to introduce a new product, or are we getting into a new business, and so forth. So once we have that scenario in place, we'll be able to put that data into context. So it's called the contextualization of the data, which is then important to derive to conclusions. And then we have also three other elements, which is moving away from a correlation. Most of what we used to have in the FP&A environment is more of a correlation. So we see that there is a link between A and B. But this type of analysis allows us to go to causality, which means we are really able to say that this lever is actually linking to that result. And the more we can do that, the more we can be sure that this lever is linking to that result, the better our insights. And then, of course, getting into the KPIs and the operationalization of those KPIs, and being strong on the execution. So all these elements will actually improve the predictive learning pattern, because we see predictive learning really like a step-by-step process. And we talked about it earlier as well. We try it. It's the crawl, walk, and run principle. So we try first, we get to a result, then we have to try again. So it's really an iterative process. And through these steps, we will be able to embed predictive learning in a good way. And if we move to the next one, I also wanted to touch upon the real-time reporting, or I like to call it the pulse reporting, which is basically the new dimension that we would like to introduce in FP&A and in the decision making. So real-time reporting is data which is delivered and processed immediately after it's collected. So for example, it should give us an idea of where are we on our cash flows as we speak. So normally in a let's say if it would work in a real-time environment, I would like to see the revenue going from 12.62, 12.63, 12 or 14, as you process orders, this should be updated as we move on. And the more we are able to enter into this type of dimension, the faster can we take our decisions, and the bigger impact we can also bring to the businesses. And this will embrace a number of areas on the cash flows, on the EBITDA, understand also the variations, increase the impact of the decisions that are taken on the business. So these are the elements that I would like to talk about, that are contributing really to taking our FP&A to the next level. Yeah, and that would be my conclusion on this slide, Hans.
Vignesh, thank you very much. A great presentation, quite a lot of things in there that stick out. I think that you leaving us with this last bit, which is real-time pulse reporting, but we need behind the scene, as you've talked about it, we need all those technologies, all those processes to be working together to be able to deliver that. So excellent, thank you very much. Let me ask my fellow panelists, Patrick and Stéphane, to join us and give us some comments on the presentation here. If I may start with yourself, Patrick.
Yeah, so thank you, Vignesh. It was a very holistic view on how to apply it. And I'm very much convinced, especially the real-time part, this will be a game changer, because it helps us, to be more forward-looking and more actionable than too much backward-looking. So I look quite forward to the future.
Thank you, Patrick. And Stéphane, any comments from you, please?
Vignesh, thanks very much for this presentation. A lot of challenges you mentioned, I also know them. Especially, I think what you mentioned, using non-financial data, using external data is a very interesting point to enhance the power of data you can use within your company. And also, I think that you speak about variance control. So some manager told me that the new normal is managing deviations. So I think this is also a very interesting point where you can use these machine learning tools to improve performance of the company. Yeah.
Fantastic, great comments, both of you. Thank you very much. And Vignesh, thank you for a great presentation. Let us now listen to what our audience have got to say, and what are they doing sort of in this space. So even though it says polling question 1 here, let me just launch this. So it is, to what extent would you say your organization is using AI and ML in finance and FP&A? No AI and ML is being used in finance and FP&A. B, we plan to use AI and ML in the future in finance and FP&A. C, some AI and ML is being used. And D, AI and ML is being used in finance and FP&A. If you can vote, please, I'll give it a few more seconds. So no AI and ML is being used. We plan to use AI and ML. Some AI and ML is being used, but no, we use quite a lot of AI and ML. If I can ask the panelists to please go on mute as well. So I'm now going to close and then share the results. So we've got 60% saying no AI and ML is used at all. 28% we plan to use AI and ML. 9% some AI and ML, and 3% only using AI and ML. Vignesh, can I ask you for a quick comment on what we're seeing here, please?
Yes, of course. And so basically for me, I'm not surprised by the 60% where the AI and ML is still at its early days. But however, if I compare this to a similar survey that I saw earlier, it looks that this 60% is still being reduced quite a lot. So it looks like there's still some strong momentum, and in a couple of years we will see this number being much lower than that. So that's really coming up across finance, and not only in FP&A. I mean, we can also think of it in other areas of finance. So I think we are really in a good momentum at this point. Yeah.
That's fantastic. Thank you for your comment here. And ladies and gentlemen, thank you for voting. Please also keep sending your comments, your questions. We will answer most of them today. If we can't, we will move on to answering them via email. So let me hide this and let us now move on to our next session, which is on predictive analytics. And for that, we've got Stefan Spiegel, who is CFO at Swiss Railway, and he will give us his case study and what he's doing within Swiss Railway as far as predictive analytics is concerned, but for planning and strategy. So Stefan, great to have you on. Over to you whenever you're ready.
Thanks very much, Hans. Hello, everybody. I'm glad to share with you our way how we use predictive analytics for planning and strategy. You can switch to the next slide. You see SBB Cargo. Perhaps somebody of you know this company. We are transporting goods on the railway for our customers. So at the first glance, a very simple business. On the next slide, I start with a simple strategic question. At the moment, our production system consists of two parts. We have main lines and we have shunting lines. On the main lines, we have mainline locomotives, we have mainline drivers. On the shunting side, we have shunting locomotives and shunting teams. And now the question is, shall we replace the two types of locomotives by just an all-in-one locomotive type? This is possible. You could do it. So at the first side is just a simple question. But next page, if we want to answer this question, we have to change our whole production system. So we have to adjust the timetables, we have to adjust the delivery times at the client side, we have to change the circulation plans, the tour plans, really everything. If you want to know what this means, you cannot do it by hand. You have to organize a huge project, which is very time consuming. And this is not the only question we have on the strategic side. So what are we doing then? On the next slide, we have created an initiative to build a digital twin of our processes using ML and AI methods. And we have three levers. We have the strategic lever, the tactics lever, and the operational lever. The goal is we want to give quick and optimal answers to strategic questions. We want to automate our forecast and also our operational dispatching processes. And we want to have a strong linkage between planning and operational lever. So this is the goal we want to achieve with our digital twin. On the next slide, you see our architecture. I want to stay on this page, but just to show you, we have a lot of processes as every business. On the next slide, I'll show you what we already have in place. So what we have is we have an automated planning of locomotive circulations, an automated planning of driver tours. We can do the staffing of drivers on the tours. This is done automatically. We can reroute the goods in case of train deviations. We can simulate network designs. So there are already some tools in place. As an example, I want to now dig in the situation how we do the planning of our driver tours. This is on the next slide. The old situation, we used a driver-based planning. So we started by a sales forecast. Out of the sales forecast, we calculated train kilometers and we derived the number of driver FTE. So it was very simple, very quick, very easy to understand. We had an 80 to 90% precision, but the problem was we didn't get any concrete insight on over or understaffing of our drivers per location. The drivers are organized in several locations, separated all over the country. So the new situation now on the right side is that we take the sales forecast and the timetables of trains, we give this input into our machine, and the machine calculates automatically the number of drivers which are needed per driver base, per driver location. So this is done automatically. Furthermore, the machine knows the necessary skills we need per driver, per tour, and the machine can check the profiles and the skills of our drivers per location. With this information, we get at once not only the number of drivers, but we also get whether we have an overstaffing or an understaffing, and we can do at once measures to close the gaps. Another thing we can do is we can simulate. So we can, for example, we can close a location and simulate what happens. We can move a location from one place to another place, and we can simulate how many drivers were needed, how would the number of drivers change. So with this instrument, we have a very good machine, a very good instrument to improve our measures, to improve our performance. Of course, on the next slide, to create our digital twin, we not everything is that easy. So, for example, looking at our predictive forecast, there we need a lot of detailed inputs, especially from our key account management. This is not that simple, so we have here to find simplifications. Concerning our last mile planning, we have a lack of operational data. So non-financial data are important for our models, and there we have a lack of such data. For some models, we need research input. We work together with universities to find solutions for our algorithmics. Of course, we can, sometimes it's not that difficult to find tools for tactical planning, but to implement these tools in the daily operation, this is just another thing. So this link is not yet existing, and very often operational people don't have time to sit on a new tool, to help develop a new tool. So these are some impediments we have to overcome during our process. As a next example, on the next slide, I tried to dig in what we tried to achieve with predictive forecasting. At the moment, we still are driver-based, so we have drivers like the gross domestic product, exchange rates, industry indicators. Out of these drivers, we can calculate the developments per industry segment. We have the sales forecast. Again, as before, it's simple, it's quick, it's 80 to 90% precise, but we don't have a concrete insight on a detailed on a specific relation how the volumes develop. And without this information, we don't have any input for optimizing our timetables. So with predictive forecasting, what we want to achieve is we want to have a detailed volume forecast per relation as an input for timetable construction, and this timetable construction as a vision, we also like to do them by machine automatically. So this would help us improve our processes in a really great way. So this is just the vision we have with predictive forecasting, where we are working on. On the next slide, I come to the key takeaways I wanna give you. So business is consisting of complex systems. So if you are just overcoming this complexity by using driver-based models, this is okay. It will be very easy, but normally you don't find the huge optimization potential. If you use AI ML instruments, the power of these instruments is so high at the moment that you really can try to understand simulate, optimize, and automate really your operating processes. So with these instruments, you can dig in the operating processes, and on that way, you not only are able to plan what's happening within your company, but you're also able to change your operational processes. So you can change the execution of what you're doing. And this makes really the difference. So this is my conclusion of this short presentation. I thank you very much for your attention.
Stefan, thank you very much for excellent presentation. There's quite a lot in there. And of course, your detailed examples shows to what level you guys have gone. Of course, it is what it really sounds or resonates here is the big one is that creation of that digital twin, which is where you guys set off. You've got a clear plan. You know what is working very well now because of the hard work. What else you've got to do over the next few years to just ensure that, you know, end to end you are there. So thank you very much for that. Let me call on Vignesh and Patrick to join us and give us some comments on this, please. So if I may ask Vignesh and Patrick to join us, and if we can start with yourself, Vignesh, please.
Yes, absolutely. So Hans, thank you very much. What I really liked about this is a topic that is of interest for all of us in finance, which is basically how do we take from the planning element into the execution and really make it translate into a result. And I think that's what we've seen in Stefan's presentation, where we could take those elements and really apply them, and so that if we clearly identify which levers we can push to get to the results. So that is really something that I found very interesting.
Thank you, Vignesh. Patrick?
No, I liked very much that you went into the operational and strategic decision making. So thinking back about the 2x2 matrix I discussed earlier, you already had the courage to go on something with a significant business impact. So I like this example a lot. Thanks for sharing, Stefan.
Thank you both very much for your comment, and Stefan, thank you for a fantastic presentation there. Let us now move on and listen to what our audience have got to say on the next polling question. If we can turn our webcam off and go on mute, please. So I'm now going to launch our third polling question, which is around what do you believe are the biggest challenges in that FP&A analytical digital journey? Is it talent and skill set? Is that what we're lacking? Is it culture, B? Is it technology that is hampering us from getting there? Or is it a big issue of data? If you can vote, please, that would be excellent. So A, is it talent and skill set? Is it culture? Is it technology, C? Or is it data, D? If you can vote, please, I'll give it another 5 seconds. Talent and skill set, A, B, culture, technology, C, and data, D. I will now move on to closing our poll, and I will share the results with our panel and with yourself. So 28% say it's talent and skill set that is hampering us. 37% say culture, 12% say technology, and 23% say it's data. Stefan, if you can tell us, you know, what we're seeing here. Any comments you have on the outcome, please?
Yes, Hans. It's very interesting what I see here, because I feel it in the same way. So because technology, the instruments are that powerful that normally the problems don't lie within technology, so we can find solutions with today's technology. But culture, it's very important here to work on a culture. You saw it in other presentations, these black boxes, these helping instruments. How can we implement them within our organizations that people like to work with these instruments? So culture, I think, really is the most important point to go on with this digital journey.
Fantastic. Thank you very much for a great comment there. If we now move on to our last element of the presentation for today. Ladies and gentlemen, before we move on to there, can I just remind you, please keep sending your questions. We will answer them. We've got an exciting Q&A session coming at the end. Before that, we'll do conclusion. So please keep sending your question via the chat box. To talk to us about technology and how technology can help us implement AI, machine learning, predictive analytics for good forecasting, we've got Fabrizio Cecchini, who's Global Head of Innovation at CCH Tagetik. Fabrizio, over to you, whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Hans. I'm ready, so we can go directly to the next slide and talk about how this technology that we saw in action during the first three presentations is really promising. So you see that in the different cases we discussed before, there is a clear evidence on how the machine learning approach is really pairing perfectly with the forecast process, because you are relying on time series in order to predict what is happening in the next future or what is likely to be happening. But despite this, we saw also in the poll that there are still 60% of people not starting yet this journey. And obviously, us as a technology provider, we have to assess the situation and we have to understand why there is this skepticism. And so we try to demystify some common sense, some common opinion that are around this topic. First of all, the skills. We talked about the skills needed to use this kind of technology. You saw in a previous presentation of Patrick, for example, that at a given point you have to match your historical data with some statistical method, like regression, random forest, neural network. It seems to be something scary for people that are not used to be data scientists. So the first question in the community was, should I recruit data scientists in order to enlarge my finance department with new skills and to be able to use this kind of technology? How the technology should react for this kind of topic? First of all, obviously, if someone has some data scientists and these people want to play with a technology, choosing their statistical methods, etc., you have to allow this, obviously, because it's something that is requested from the market. But for finance skilled people, they are excluded for this journey if they do not take any kind of training of elevated knowledge of this kind of topic. Our answer is no. You should be able, technologically wise, to solve this kind of complexity behind the scene. It means that you should be able to provide something that is plug and play for finance skilled people, where, for example, the selection of the right method to forecast or to combine with our business should be solved automatically behind the scene and not with a manual selection of a given regression algorithm done by a data scientist. Second, we invested during our life a lot of money to implement our planning process. A lot of money in terms of license and technology. We bought something that was already accelerating or automating this process. And after we spend also on internal people allocated to implement this technology, but also on external help, consultancy and those kind of things, in order to make it happen and to go in production with our life systems that we use nowadays. So if I introduce a new technology like machine learning, should I redesign the entire forecast process? So should I get rid of what I did so far, wasting investment, and be forced as a consequence to do new investment in order to put in place a new model, a new way of working, etc. This is obviously scaring because you don't want to, let me say, plan a big amount of money to be invested, a big amount of hours to be investment of your people. You cannot afford this kind of effort immediately. So this is the second reason normally of skepticism. How the technology should react on this. It should allow you to go incrementally, like also said before by Patrick correctly. So you should start from what you have and introduce smoothly this new way of thinking in order to have a sort of a maturity journey. We will see after how does it is translating into reality. The third reason of skepticism that we encountered is about trust on the prediction itself. Also, if you have evidence about the accuracy of the model that you built yourself or with some support from the technology or whatever, if after this model is calculating your prediction, is calculating your forecast, how you can trust the calculation? It seems that you are not owning at all and not anymore your business. So it seems that you have to rely on what the machine is telling you. So if you do not have any explanation on why a given calculation has been made as such, you are a little bit skeptical because you do not understand if it is correct and after if and how you can change the future behavior of your business acting on some important drivers of your model. The technology in this case should help you because nowadays, beside the algorithm for the predictive analytics, there is also the possibility to enrich the prediction with the explanation on why a given prediction has been made by the machine. So it's the machine itself that is saying, I did this result because of this reason, this reason, the reason. We will see later how this kind of explanation can be shown in the screen to an end user. So if we go into the next slide, we can understand what is the journey and the iteration we are suggesting in order to introduce smoothly this technology. So the mantra is start from what you have because you have immediately some good result out of it. I make you an example. I made you an example that is based on a typical prediction, the prediction of the net revenues, for example. At the moment, probably if you follow traditional modeling, you are doing prediction of net revenues, taking into consideration, for example, quantity, unit prices, discount, and after you combine this component in a deterministic formula saying that product unit price by quantity and removing the discount, you have your net revenues. If you provide your historical data about these variables to a machine, the machine will learn what are the historical behavior of your business, but is also finding the correlation between the variables you consider. For example, it can understand how a given action on discount is affecting your quantity behavior. This is already something that is new for you because it's something that is linking each other the root causes of the success of your business. After this kind of first result, iteratively and progressively, you can add new data, new insight, like for example, Vignesh was highlighting a lot during his presentation. Like for example, you take data from your supply chain, from your quality index, from your logistic, from the external world, like demographic data, COVID pandemic rates, and those kind of things. But it shouldn't be a big bang. You start from what you have, and progressively, when data are ready, you inject the data into the machine, and the machine will try to find how this new data pairs with your historical behavior. Obviously, the more data you have, the best accuracy in theory you are reaching in your model because you are providing more insight about the business and the context where your business is moving. So iterating these phases, you can reach progressively your maturity. If we go to the next slide, in order to get the insight from for your business, we understood during the previous presentation, but also in my introduction, that you need to have data. So the data are recognized as the new gold because in the data there is some hidden insight of your performances. Whenever you talk about data, you introduce additional complexity that the technology best be able to solve and to assist in order to guarantee that everything is going smoothly. First of all, we are talking about volume. Whenever you talk about operational data, external data, you are addressing immediately the need to expand the data lake that is available for your analysis. And after you need velocity. Vignesh was saying, I want to be ready for a pulse reporting in real time, so everything should be fast. The variety is in itself between the non-financial, financial, operational, etc., external data, demographics, so you have a variety of sources, variety of insight. And after veracity, so you need to check, certificate, and validate the quality of your data. The technology obviously can assist you now because we are getting more and more mature in this kind of data asset management. If we go to the next slide, we can see how technology can be in action in the context of the machine learning. In this screen, for example, you see clearly how, for example, accuracy of the model can be analyzed by finance-minded people. Why? Because the machine made this model thanks to historical data. And after, we use this model to project back to your business and compare this with the actual. Whenever you see the deviation between the actual, obviously there is an error, but the error can be controlled to be lesser than a given precision that you can set. When you are fine with the precision and the accuracy, you can use this model to project. And when you project, as you see on the right of this screen, our technology, for example, is providing you attention. I made my projection, and the most impacting driver for my calculation of this point of view of the business, for example, is the discount. In the second position, there is the marketing initiative number 4, and so on and so fast. So this sensitivity analysis on drivers considered is indicating to our planner why a given prediction has been made, and is enabling also for the same planner the possibility to do a conscious what-if analysis. Because if I want to change the future behavior of my business, probably I will make new assumption, I will take action exactly on top of the drivers that are affecting the most my performances. This is my final conclusion. So be ready to start.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Fabrizio. Excellent presentation there. So many stuff and so many examples as well. And, you know, I really like the way you started with, you know, what people think are the issues with putting AI, machine learning, predictive planning, and analytics into place. But more importantly, how do you overcome them? That's the key thing. And there's a lot of the percentages we've seen, a lot of them have got these issues and they don't know how to tackle it. So thank you for sharing that. Can I ask my fellow panelists to join me, all of you actually, if you may, and give us some comments on Fabrizio's presentation, please. If I can start with yourself, Patrick.
No, I like that it's very practical advices and good tools that we all should use to move forward with the journey.
Thank you very much, Patrick. Stefan?
Thanks very much, Fabrizio, for this presentation. What my experience also is, data is the new gold. In a lot of situations, we need much more time to just clean or to look for data than just to implement some model to make analysis out of the data. So really, having data is really the new gold. It's very important to have them. And what I also like is this step-by-step approach you mentioned. So not trying to do a big bang, but just to move continually forward. Thanks very much.
Absolutely, and then the other point there, Stefan, is the fact that you don't have to ditch everything you have. That's a great start point that Fabrizio's talked about. Start from there. You don't have to ditch your current processes, etc., and build on it. So, which is fantastic to hear. Guys, thank you very much. Vignesh, you've joined us. Can you give us some comments on Fabrizio's presentation as well, please? Vignesh, can you hear me? I think you're on mute, Vignesh.
Okay, yeah, I can hear you now. Yeah, absolutely. I really enjoyed the presentation, especially when it came to looking at those type of steps that we need to take, that Fabrizio, you talked about, to go step by step into this into this analytics journey, so to say. So that's the part that I really like, because I think most of the difficulties is in the fact that people generally get discouraged a bit too early, because they want to immediately to see the result. They are trying things, it's not coming, they've started a big project, it's taking months, and then just stop. But we really need to be able to go into this baby step approach. A first one, a quick win, a second one, and that, I think, that is what this presentation is doing. So that's my main takeaway here. Yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, panelists, for your comments. And Fabrizio, thank you very much for a great presentation. If we can now switch off our webcam and move on to the next polling question. Just before we go to the polling question, I would like to just ask our audience to keep sending your questions. We will answer them, and please stay with us. We've got an exciting sets of questions coming shortly. So our next and last polling question is, so where do you think you will put the money and the resource in terms of enhancing your digital journey in finance and FP&A? What is the key factor for you to do that? Is it you going to invest in technology, in leadership support, skill sets and competencies in finance, or business partner buy-in? Where are you going to put that resource so you move to that next level? Is it technology? Is it leadership support? Is it skills and competencies in finance? Or finally, is it business partner buy-in? If you can vote, please, that would be great. I'll give it another few seconds. Technology, leadership support, skills and competencies, and finally, business partners buy-in. I'm now going to close it, and I'm now going to share the results with you guys. So 13% said technology is where they will. 38% is leadership support is what they need. 29% say it's skills and competencies in finance that need to be improved. And 20% say it's business partner buy-in that is important. Fabrizio, can I ask you for your comment on what we're seeing here, please?
I see clearly that before talking about technology and implementation, it's important to have sponsorship. Let me say in this way, it means that it should be part of a strategy of the company. The leadership should be involved and engaged on make this happening, and that's we need to have the right culture, like also identified in the previous poll. So it's something that I agree, because before talking about execution, we needed to agree on the mission.
Absolutely. Thank you very much for that comment, Fabrizio. Let me hide that. Ladies and gentlemen, please keep sending your questions. We will answer most of them today. If not, we will definitely answer them via email. So it is now a good point to do some conclusions. So if I may ask my fellow panelists to join us as we go through the conclusion elements. So if you can join us on the webcam, please, all of you. Thank you very much. Vignesh, what will be your 2-3 concluding points that you would like to make today?
Yes. So the first takeaway for me is that we see an acceleration in the momentum of getting FP&A to the next level. So I think that's based on what we see happening at Lonza, what Stefan talked about, and also what Fabrizio talked about. Based on my own experience, we see that there is an acceleration that is taking place. So that's one of my key takeaways. So I would encourage everyone to actively join this early adopters momentum, because it really will help and will make a difference. The second conclusion is, for me, or the second takeaway, is that it is not sufficient to have an insight, but we need to be able to use that insight into a meaningful decision, which will have an impact, to Stefan's point, on the execution or operational part, and then translate it into a result. So it should be really things that make a difference into specific numbers, like the EBITDA or operating profit or cash flow or any other metric that we decide to monitor. And finally, the third takeaway for me is really the importance of the human capital and the sponsorship of the leadership here, because this is a journey which is complex and which will have to be conducted through step, crawl, walk, run approach, and we need a strong leadership and sponsorship that supports that. So these are the three main takeaways for me.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Vignesh. And Patrick, if I can come to yourself, what will be your 2-3 key takeaways?
I built what Vignesh said. I think this definitely comes predictive analytics. We see it. There's a lot of tools. There are a lot of applications. So I think I would accept the reality that this will come as a new future. And secondly, I encourage you embark on this journey. Experiment, use the tools, and start early rather than late. It will make you beneficial.
Thank you very much, Patrick. Stefan, what will be your conclusions?
So one thing is that we see technology will reduce the barriers to use AI ML instruments in the future. So this is one development I see everywhere. This is one thing which is very important. The other thing is this trial and error culture that is also very important, to have the courage to go into these things. This needs leadership. This needs people that sponsor such approaches. It's another thing that just doing a fixed project where one knows exactly what happens. So trial and error, making experiments. This is I think this is the DNA, said somebody, for exploring these technologies.
Fantastic. Fabrizio, your conclusions, please.
Yes, I want to reinforce the message of my colleagues. I try to demystify what are the complexity around this topic, and I want to really invite you to take the next step, because now the technology, as I said, allows you to do it smoothly and to test and to try and to touch with your hands. Remember that we are all leader of our business. We do not have a hierarchical structure. So in some way, we have to take this move, at least to see what happens, and to understand that there is some benefit.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Fabrizio. And thank you all, guys, for concluding. We will now straight away move on to our Q&A session. Again, please, FP&A leaders, please keep sending your questions via the chat box. We will answer a few of them today, but the rest of them we will answer via email. So please keep sending them. So if we start, of course, with Vignesh, and Vignesh, I've got a great question for you. Just bear with me a sec, I'll get to it. Yeah. So the question to you, Vignesh, is you talked about internal and external data sources. How do you choose the external data sources? Is it trial and error, or is there a science behind it?
Okay, that's a great question. I think when it comes to the external data, the first step would be to really explore what type of information would be useful for that type of decision. So it's really, if I need to take maybe an example. I use the example of pricing a product. So I would try to be really, so to say, candid about it, and say, okay, would it not be interesting to have a market pricing approach, and would you not be interested to know what your colleagues, peers, and competition is doing? If that is the case, then the second step would be to go out and see if that information is available. Sometimes it's available easily, some other times it's more complex. You need more steps to either buy it or procure that. So there's also a cost-benefit trade-off, but that would be an educated guess, so to say. So it's between the trial error and a given systematic would be my answer.
Fantastic, great answer there. Thank you very much for that. Our next question goes to Patrick, and the question to you, Patrick, is how much of investment you had to make in order to go ahead to with predictive analytics, for example, with working capital? I know you probably can't put a number to it. Any suggestion of how to start if there's no budget for that approval?
I think it's more investment of people's time. A lot of things can be done internally. There is, one or two experts to have on the machine learning algorithms, but typically you can outsource if you find a good partner who's also willing, to embark on a long-term journey. It can be done, quite cost effective. I would say, within below 1 or 200,000, you can build viable products nowadays.
Fantastic, thank you very much. Of course, you've always got to utilize what you've got in-house. There's no two ways about it. And more or less, even though you're paying for it, this is free resource. So thank you for highlighting that, Patrick. Stefan, we've got a question for you next. Stefan, amazing for you to talk to us about digital twin. Can you give us an idea of, how long that project took for you to design that digital twin? And of course, what were your biggest challenges you faced as well, please?
Thanks for this question. So we started with the initiative in 2017, so 3 years ago. We started quite in a small way with an external partner, as Patrick told us. We made some experiments, and we made an insourcing of the people to nowadays, I can say, the special people that are working on these digital twins, let's say, are about 5 people in-house, and of course there are some external partners. But okay, we did it now for 3 years, and I think we will have some years again in front of us just to work on this digital twin. So as already said, it's doing it step by step, and and having the patience to continue with this process.
Absolutely, and you shared with us, what you've already done and what is there left to do. So it's a long-term project, but of course you're looking at fully digitalizing your twin, as you say. So of course it will be a lengthy process, but you learn from it, you improve, and it's a continuous learning process as well. So thank you for that, Stefan. Our next question goes to Fabrizio. Very interesting question for you, Fabrizio, as is for all of our panelists. After Gartner announced that XP&A trend, do you forecast that vendors will embed or will start to embed AI, ML, and predictive planning within the tool itself? How do you see that panning out?
So the assessment of Gartner is that we are moving from financial planning analytics to extended planning. But what does it mean? It means that this is also demonstrating the transformation journey of the CFO role, that is becoming a sort of business advisor for operations. But whenever you talk about advisory for operation, you have to introduce in your deck lots of new information coming from the supply chain, from the operational side of things, etc. So here I see the link of this technology is one of the real enabler of this kind of shortcut. Because in order to be accurate also on your financial KPI projection, you need operational data in input. Then this kind of collapse between the two ecosystems, now it's demonstrated in the concept of machine learning for predictive forecast. So I see this as a table stake of this journey.
Absolutely, and of course, the fact that vendors will now start to bring together the XP&A tool, AI, ML, etc., within the same sort of tool also means that it is more affordable going forward. Hopefully, this is what we are looking at you guys and everybody else out there to be able to help the FP&A, the finance community, and the organizations with the future. So thank you for that, Fabrizio. We've still got a little bit of time left. So what I'm going to do is field one general question to all of the panelists, and we'll go in the same sort of order. And the question is much more around very general, what will be your 2-3 step to start implementing predictive analytics, machine learning, AI into planning. So if I may start with yourself, Vignesh, what would you say, guys? How do you start?
Yes, sure, Hans. I mean, one of the first steps is to see where predictive analytics can make most, let's say, most sense. So the way I read it is I'd like to see where can I get most of my efforts if I integrate external data and I also integrate data not only from the past or historical, but also from like simulations or scenario type of simulation. And I think the sales forecasting or the top line forecasting would be probably the first place to start with, based on that aspect. And then the other one would also be areas around cash flow forecasting based on the various elements that we have that impact through internal, external payment terms and etc. So these would be the two areas that I would first look at on those aspects.
Thank you, Vignesh. And Patrick, would you like to add to this? I mean, what would you concentrate on?
A bit as outlined in my presentation, I suggest to take a bit of time first before concluding and jumping into it. You know, for us, it was helpful to more systematically look at the business impact versus how difficult it is to implement. And that can also depend on your process maturity, where you have the data, or where you have the processes stable. And then don't pick the hardest one to start with, you know, that you get something to build positive momentum.
Fantastic. Thank you, Patrick. Stefan, would you like to add to what we need to do or how you would start?
Just one point from my experience. Don't stay too dogmatic on how to start. For example, when I look at our situation, of course, sales forecast is something that everybody speaks about. But if we would have concentrated on sales forecast, we wouldn't been able to show just good results. We are just working on this issue. By the way, we had a solution provider that could deliver a good instrument for our driver planning, and with this we have great success. So it depends a little bit on your environment, on your possibilities, where you can find good successes, good solutions. So don't stay too dogmatic on just one way, but look a little bit around and start your journey.
Absolutely. I think to the point that Patrick made, you know, don't just jump into it, think about it, look at what you could start, what are the quick wins, etc. And you know, where, you know, it will make the biggest impact is probably another key thing, as you all mentioned, all three of you. And finally, Fabrizio, what would you like to add? So, you know, what are those 2-3 things that you can tell people to start off with?
Yes, we have to be pragmatic. So it is true that our vision it is that the entire forecast and potentially in all the KPIs can be fully automated with the necessary data background for each indicator. But this sort of achievement is a sort of landing phase of the journey. So as I said before, select the first KPIs that where you are more ready in terms of data, insight, interpretation, etc., and start from what you have and do incrementally. Like I said during my speech, so do not start immediately with a big bang of data for sales, for example, or for cost analysis, etc. Start from what you have traditionally and add smoothly and progressively new insight.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Fabrizio. And thank you very much, all four of you, for all the insight and for answering the question. And again, I would like to tell the audience to carry on sending your questions. We've answered quite a few of them. The rest we will answer definitely by email via our presenters. So just a few closing slides. So ladies and gentlemen, if you'd like to just stay on the webcam until we're finished. So what have we got next for you guys in terms of your diary? Upcoming digital meetings, we've got Digital FP&A, Benelux FP&A Board, where we're going to talk about how are we now building a financial planning and analysis team, especially post-COVID, post all the changes, etc. And very much relating to that, we've got the Digital Central European FP&A Board, where we're talking about what are those key 2030 FP&A skills and capability that we need to think of for the next decade. So please come and join us 7th of December and November the 18th, date for your diary. Good time to now say thank you to our sponsor, Walter Kluwers, for sponsoring our event. A great time to say thank you to our panelists who have been fantastic in their input, presentation, but also for answering all the questions and comments. So thank you very much, guys, for making time to come and present to us and give us all the insight. And finally, a big, massive thank you to all of the people who have attended this meeting. Hope you've enjoyed this. And then final slide here is how you can stay in touch with us. So please do. Just before I close the meeting, I would like to just point out, when I do close it, there's a feedback session. So spend another 30 seconds to a minute with us and give us some feedback around how well we did, but also more importantly, what would you like to listen to next in our next meeting? So with that, ladies and gentlemen, I would say a big thank you. And this concludes our meeting for today. Look forward to seeing you again. Thank you very much, everyone. Goodbye. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
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 Bye-bye.